Hello children, welcome to Diksha online classes. Today we are going to talk about the crash course program on chemistry on electrochemistry, solutions and surface chemistry. Three topics we are going to discuss today. So starting with electrochemistry, what is electrochemistry? It is a branch of science which deals with study of exchange of energies in two forms: electrical energy to chemical energy to electrical energy, resulting in a redox reactions. So there will be two types: spontaneous redox reactions, non-spontaneous redox reactions, leading to both the reactions we are going to see. In that first category, electrolysis. Electrolysis is the decomposition of electrolyte by passing electricity through its aqueous solution or molten or fused state. So when you pass an electrical energy, the electrolyte will be undergoing chemical decomposition to cations and anions. First, it will be cleaving into cations, anions. Cations will go to the cathode, anions will go to the anode. Cations undergo reduction, anions undergo oxidation. Resulting, this particular process is a redox. But since it is in presence of electrical energy, we say it is non-spontaneous redox reaction. So these type of reactions are electrolysis reactions, electrolytic reactions. And that the next one is Faraday's first law of electrolysis, where mass of a substance deposited or liberated is directly proportional to quantity of charge passing through the electrolytic solution, which can be explained in this way: M is equals to Z into Q, where Z is taken as electrochemical equivalent, which is given with the formula equivalent weight by 96,500, where we can write this particular one in an elaborated form as atomic weight by valency. It is equivalent weight into I into T is the Q by 96,500. So the Faraday's first law, the numerical formula for Faraday's first law can be taken in this way. So this is the Faraday's first law. Second law, if you have series of bulbs connected in a series and the same quantity of current is passed through series of bulbs collected, then the quantity of current passed through the cells is same. The mass of the substance deposited is directly proportional to their chemical equivalents. So if I take A, Ma by equivalent weight of A is equals to Mb by equivalent weight of B. This is Faraday's second law. Moving to the detailed of electrolysis, what is required in the electrolysis is the conductors. And the conductors, the different types of conductors, we have electrolytic conductors and electronic conductors. Electrodes act as electronic conductors and electrolyte acts as electrolytic conductor. So we are talking about the conductance, the specific conductance. It is given by specific conductance K is given by G into L by A, where K can be defined as conductance per unit volume of solution. Always remember in this way: per unit volume of solution. If you take conductance per unit volume of solution, it will be easy to determine. It's a volume related factor. So when you take volume related factor, if concentration increases, the volume of solution is decreasing, concentration increases, K value increases, because it is the volume is decreasing in that case. If volume is decreasing, concentration increases, K increases. So it is taken, the unit for the specific conductance is Simon meter inverse. K can also be written in the another formula, 1 by R into L by A. This can also be taken as the formula for K calculating this particular instance. Equivalent conductance and molar conductance. Molar conductance is the conductance of the solution for 1 mole of electrolyte for any volume of the solution. Any volume. 1 mole of electrolyte in the solution of given concentration. It is indicated as lambda m is equals to K into 1000 by molarity. If the unit can be taken Simon centimeter square mole inverse. Same way, if you take equivalent conductant, it is gram equivalent of electrolyte. It should be defined as K into 1000 by equivalent conductance is for normality. So Simon centimeter square equivalent inverse. See the units carefully. Mole inverse is for molar conductance. Equivalent inverse is for equivalent conductance of the solution. Moving to the equivalent conductance effects on dilution. On dilution, when you take K is directly proportional to concentration, lambda is inversely proportional to concentration. This is our basic point. So on dilution, K value decreases, lambda value increases in respect to whether it is weak electrolyte or strong electrolyte. This does not matter. So this is about the effect of dilution on conductances. Try to remember, this is very important, very important for the competitive approach. Concentration is directly proportional to K because it is per unit volume. As volume is increasing, K decreases. So lambda is independent of volume, it is dependent on constant. So it is inversely proportional concentration, lambda increases. This is very important concept. Moving to the next very important concept is Nernst equation, which is given in this way. E cell is equals to E naught cell minus 2.303 RT by NF log QC, which can also be written as E cell is equals to E naught cell minus 0.059 by N into log of QC, where QC can be written as resultant concentration of the cationic species, concentration of ions at cathode, concentration of ions at anode by concentration of ions at cathode. Just try to remember this way, raise it to the powers of their own stoichiometric coefficients. If you can remember this way, it is very easy to remember the formula. QC can also be taken in terms of partial pressure, pressure at cathode by pressure at anode, raise it to the powers of their own stoichiometric coefficients. Try to remember, if pressure it is cathode by anode, if it is ions it is anode by cathode. That's the simple way to remember. And we have the value of Faraday is taken as 96,500 coulombs of electricity. So the Nernst equation can be defined in this way, very easy equation. Try to remember this. Now EMF, if you are taking E naught, E cell is given with the formula E cell is equals to E naught cathode minus E naught anode, where E naught is represented in terms of reduction potentials. This is as per IUPAC. You should always follow the terminology should be reduction potential, not in terms of oxidation potentials. That is very important point to be taken care. Now the importance of salt bridge in the electrolyte electrochemical cells. The salt bridge, it is a U-shaped tube containing concentrated solutions of inert electrolytes like KCl, KNO3, K2SO4 are present in agar-agar gel. Remember, the most important point in this is these particular electrolytes are not only just inert electrolytes, the condition they satisfy is the ionic mobility. The ionic mobility of cation is equals to anion of cation is similar to that of anion. Only such type of electrolytes are taken into salt bridge formation. Not any type of electrolyte can be considered. So that is one of the major property. And the function of salt bridge is to close the circuit. First one is to complete inner circuit, to maintain electrical neutrality, and to avoid liquid junction potential. So this is commonly asked in conceptual type of questions. You should be aware of this particular one. Moving to the next concept, the electrolyte cells. In the electrolytic cells, if you take the electrolysis process, if you see, cation moves to cathode, anion moves to anode. Try to remember in this way, anion moves to anode. We know cation is positive, so cathode is negative. Anion is negative, so anode will be positive. So according to electrolytic cells, anode is positive electrode, cathode is negative electrode. Whereas in electrochemical cells, it's exactly reverses. Anode becomes negative, cathode becomes positive. But whether it is electrochemical cell or electrolytic cell, what is going to be common? Anox red cat. What is anox red cat? Oxidation takes place at anode, reduction takes place at cathode. That will not change in the process. Electrode potentials, if you are taking standard or normal hydrogen electrode, is represented as E naught H plus 2 H2. If you take this particular one, This is given as 0 volts. This is the representation of hydrogen electrodes E naught H plus to H2 platinum, where 1 atmospheric pressure is taken as this particular one, 1 molar concentration is taken as the H plus ion concentration. Then it is taken as standard hydrogen electrode, which is arbitrarily taken as 0 volts. And what is important here, the formula we should remember, E hydrogen H plus to H2, try to remember here itself, is always equals to minus of 0.0591 into pH. This is the formula which you can use in the numericals. That is very, 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 very important formula. Coming to electrochemical series, we know electrochemical series is arranged in the increasing order of their standard electrode potentials, in the order of their reduction potentials, moving from negative reduction potential to 0 to positive reduction potentials, where fluorine will be the last, lithium will be the first, moving to 0 will be the hydrogen, comes in the middle. So all these are going to be the strong metals, strong reducing agents, and all these will be the strong oxidizing agents. So the reducing power decreases from left to right, oxidizing power increases from left to right. That is going to be the major important one. So the applications, if you see, the relative oxidizing and reducing powers can be predicted with respect to the electrochemical series. Higher the E value, that means it is a strong oxidizing agent. It should be having more positive value. Lower the E value, more negative it's the value is, stronger reducing agent it is. So if you can identify whether a metal can displace hydrogen or not, so question mostly comes on this. How, whether a hydrogen can displace hydrogen, a metal can displace hydrogen from dilute acids or not? Who will identify? Yes, the negative value of E can displace hydrogen. Positive value of E cannot displace hydrogen. That's a simple logic to remember whether it can displace hydrogen or not. Applications of electrochemical series, if you see, to calculate standard free energy change, delta G calculations, minus delta G is equals to NFE E cell, delta G naught is equals to minus NFE naught cell. So we have E naught cell is equals to 0.059 by N log Kc. At equilibrium, we have the condition at equilibrium. What is the condition? Delta G is equals to 0, E cell is equals to 0, but E naught cell is not equal to 0. This is taken at equilibrium conditions, the most important formula that will be more useful in the numericals. Corrosion. Corrosion is the destruction of metal due to attack of atmospheric gases. Destruction of metal, that means causing the process of oxidation. Metal undergoing oxidation is corrosion phenomena. Metal undergoing oxidation, if rusting is taken as an example, rusting of iron, rusting is taken, the rust can be taken as the formula Fe2O3.XH2O. The composition of rust, mostly they'll ask you, is rusting what type of phenomena? Rusting of iron is an electrochemical phenomena. Remember, rusting is an electrochemical phenomena. Rusting is enhanced by presence of the impurities in the metal, moisture, electrolyte, acid. So increase in the acid medium, if H plus concentration increases, it is favorable for rusting phenomena or corrosion phenomena. It is favorable, is favored. If concentration of H plus increases, rusting is more favored. That is one of the most important concept to be taken care before we go into this. And corrosion, if we continue, it can be prevented by painting, galvanizing, electroplating, tinning, barrier protection, and cathodic protections. This can also be taken into consideration for corrosion phenomena. So going forward, before leaving electrochemistry, we need to have one more concept, very important concept, that is Kohlrausch law. Kohlrausch law is equivalent conductance or molar conductance of an electrolyte at infinite dilution is sum of the ionic conductances of cations and anions at infinite dilution, where application of this very important in numerical approach in the examination. At weak electrolyte, lambda naught for weak electrolyte is calculated with sum of two strong electrolytes subtracting the weak one of the strong electrolyte is subtracted, two strong electrolytes are added, and one strong electrolyte is subtracted. which are added, which is subtracted, which is having common ion with respect to weak electrolyte is added, no common ion containing strong electrolyte is subtracted. That is the logic for the Kohlrausch law applications. Degree of dissociation, if you talk about degree of dissociation, degree of association, dissociation, it is given as equivalent conductance at the concentration C2, infinite dilution, or Ka, degree of dissociation constant. The question comes on the dissociation constant, immediately we'll be taking this particular one. Dissociation constant is given as C alpha square. This is one of the most important concepts. So moving out of the principle, now we are moving into the next topic, solutions and surface chemistry. What is solution? Introduction to solution, a very simple introduction. A homogeneous mixture of two or more substances is called solution. If it is two substances, is called binary solution. And if your solvent is very much high in the composition to that of solute, we call them as dilute solutions. So the composition of solvent is very much greater than that of the solute, then that type of solutions are called dilute solutions. Coming to molality and mole fraction, molality is given as number of moles of solute in 1 kilogram of solvent. Remember, this is very word, not solution, solvent. So number of moles of solute, n solute by weight of solvent. Weight of solvent in kg is called as molality. Small m is indicated by this. Now we are getting molality is taken as W2 by M2 into 1000 by W1. This is taken as molality. Now coming to the next concept is mole fractions. Mole fraction can be taken as number of moles, ratio of number of moles of one component to the total number of moles of overall components present in the solution. It can be given with the formula x1 is equal to n1 by n1 plus n2. x2 can be given as n2 by n1 plus n2. And sum of x1 plus x2 should be always equals to 1. This is one of the most important factor that has to be taken care. So mole fraction we have seen. Coming to the major important point as per the competitive is molality and mole fraction does not change on changing the temperature. They are independent of temperature since they are not related to volume of solution, where molarity is dependent on temperature. Directly it is dependent on the volume of the solution. It is dependent on volume, so inversely proportional. Volume is directly proportional to temperature, so molarity is a temperature dependent factor. Molality and mole fraction are independent factors. Colligative properties. What are colligative properties? The properties of a solution which depends on properties of solution which depends on number of solute particles. Number of solute particles, those properties are called as colligative properties. What are those? Relative lowering of vapor pressure, delta P by P naught is taken as relative lowering of vapor pressure. Osmotic pressure indicated with pi. Elevation in boiling point indicated with delta TB. Depression in freezing point indicated with delta TF. All these are the colligative properties. The properties which depends on the number of solute particles but not on the nature of solute particles, they are called as colligative properties. Coming to semi-permeable membranes and osmosis. Semi-permeable membranes, semi means half. So the substances which allow, if you take this is the semi-permeable membrane, it selectively only allows the solvent molecules to pass through it. Solute cannot pass through it, only the solvent can pass through it. That particular membrane is called semi-permeable membrane. So now what are the natural semi-permeable membranes? Pig's bladder skin, plant membranes, animal membranes, egg membrane, all those comes under natural semi-permeable. Cupric ferrocyanide, this can be taken, or Parkman paper, they come under artificial. So it will be very crucial in conceptual type of questions. When it comes, you should be identifying what is natural, what is artificial. Osmosis, the phenomena of flow of pure solvent from solvent side to the solution side, or from less concentration solution to more concentration solution. So moving from less concentration, this is the word you should remember, towards more concentration, This particular one is called osmosis. The direction is always fixed. This direction is osmosis, and that should be passing through semi-permeable membrane. Without this, it cannot be possible. Osmosis, if you take, there are two types: exoosmosis, endoosmosis. Exo, outside, so it is outward flow of water, exoosmosis from the cell. If you say endo, into, so that means inward flow of the water into a cell, it is endoosmosis. Examples: grape in concentrated sugar, grape in water. These are the examples for exoosmosis and endoosmosis. Osmotic pressure, if you take, it is the equilibrium hydrostatic pressure due to the column of the solution, which just prevents the entry of pure solvent into the solution through semi-permeable membrane. It's a hydrostatic pressure. Simple way to understand: if you have osmosis happening, you have applied a pressure over here which stops osmosis. So the external pressure applied to stop osmosis, the pressure applied to stop osmosis is called osmotic pressure. So in a simple one line word, the external pressure applied opposite to the direction of osmosis to stop osmosis, that is osmotic pressure, and it is measured by Berkeley-Hartley's method, and the formula for osmotic pressure is given with pi is equals to CRT. This is similar to that of your so pi is equals to CRT, similar to your PV is equals to nRT. C can be written as N by V RT, N by V RT. So you can write pi V is equals to nRT, PV is equals to nRT. This is like your ideal gas equation. Now how can we write N value? P pi V is equals to W, weight of solute, by molecular weight of solute, into RT. This can be taken. Always T should be expressed in Kelvin scale, never in degree centigrade. Now how to select R value depends on the unit how you express pi. Pi can be expressed in atmosphere, then use 0.0821 liter atmosphere, Kelvin inverse, mole inverse. This is the unit. But if you are expressing in pascals, then R should be taken as 8.314. Remember, this is the very important, the selection of R value. Isotonic, very important terms. If you have two solutions and the two solutions have same osmotic pressure, then osmosis will not take place between the two solutions. So if two solutions have same osmotic pressure at same temperature, then those solutions are called isotonic solutions. When solutions are isotonic, their molar concentrations are equal, molarities are equal, C1 is equals to C2, and if their molar concentrations are equal and volumes are equal, then N1 will be equals to N2. N1 is equals to N2 can be taken as W1 by M1 is equals to W2 by M2. So this is the final formula which you can use for isotonic solutions. Whenever the question comes isotonic, the formula we can use is W1 by M1 is equals to W2 by M2. And moving forward, some additional information about isotonic. Blood is an isotonic solution to 0.91% NaCl. This is the conceptual question you should learn. What is the concentration of NaCl which is isotonic with blood? 0.91% NaCl solution. When a plant or animal cell is placed in a solution which is more dilute than cell fluid, water enters into the cell. So if you take, it enters into the cell. This will result in the expansion of the cell, bulges out. This is taken as turbidity. When the reverse is happening, that means if it is being placed, it's more concentrated, the solution is more concentrated than cell, then in that case the liquid from the cell will come out, results in the shrinking of the cell. Shrinking of the cell takes place, which is taken as plasmolysis. So if you understand, bulging of the cell or this one will happen in only two kings if you are keeping anything in contact with a particular solution. Now in the both the process, a more concentrated solution, less concentrated solution, what are they called as? Hypertonic, hypotonic. If you have two solutions, one is of more concentrated and the other one is of less concentrated, Now this more concentrated solution is called hypertonic solution. Hyper, which is taken as high concentration. Higher, if osmotic pressure is higher than that of the solution separated by semi-permeable membrane, then that solution is called hypertonic solution. And if the reverse happens, hypotonic solutions, which is having lower concentration or lower osmotic pressure, then they are called as hypotonic solutions. So hypertonic and hypotonic solutions which we have, which in regards to the concentrations of the two solutions. Vapor pressure. What is vapor pressure? Vapor pressure is the pressure exerted by the vapor molecules in equilibrium with its liquid state. So that is taken as vapor pressure. Related to vapor pressure, we have Raoult's law. According to the Raoult's law, relative lowering of vapor pressure produced by dissolving a non-volatile solute in a solvent is equal to mole fraction of solute. Delta P by P naught is equals to X solute. This is the formula of Raoult's law. Raoult's law is given as delta P by P naught is equal to X solute. The final formula can be taken P naught minus P. Delta P by P naught is N2 by N1 plus N2. For very dilute solutions, we can further change this one into delta P by P naught is equals to N2 by N1, which can be written as W2 by M2 into M1 by W1, which makes much more easy in calculations in the competitive examinations is concerned. So this is vapor pressure, relative lowering of vapor pressure, the one of the colligative property after osmotic pressure. Moving to elevation in boiling points. Elevation of boiling points, if you take delta TB, it is the increase in the boiling point of the solution when any impurity is added to the pure solvent. So if you take T is the boiling point of pure solvent, T naught you take, let us take T naught, and T is the boiling point of solution, then T naught is where you are taking this particular one, T solution, Ts is the solution, is always greater than T naught. So Ts minus T naught is taken as delta Tb, which is taken as increase in the boiling point, elevation in the boiling point. It is related to molecular mass, as when you are taking the related to molecular mass, delta Tb, where you take this particular one, we have the formula delta Tb is equals to Kb into molality. Kb into molality. So that means your delta Tb is inversely proportional to molecular mass. So it is inversely proportional, where you have molecular mass and it is related inversely. Kb is equals to molar elevation constant, and Kb value for water is taken as 0.52. We can take 512 or 52 approximately. So that is going to be the molar elevation constant, which is also called as ebullioscopy constant. So the formula for delta Tb can be given in this particular one. Same type of formulas, where T is the freezing point of the pure solvent and T is the solution. Delta Tf is expressed as depression in the freezing point. What is the difference from there to here? If we are taking the molecular weight formula, this is the formula for the molecular weight, 1000 kf into W2 by delta Tf into W1. If it is delta Tb, there is no change in the formula. The only thing here also, molecular weight is inversely proportional to delta Tf, and Kf for water is taken as 1.86. This is going to be for water, the standard values. The only point we have to remember, delta T in general can be written as K into W2 by M2 into 1000 by W1. This is the formula we can remember for both depression and elevation. If it is boiling point, keep B here. If it is freezing point, keep F. If it is boiling point, KB or KF. Remaining everything remains same. The only thing you have to do is, if it is the elevation in boiling point, T solution will be T naught plus delta Tb. If it is freezing point, T solution will be T naught minus delta Tb. So that's how it will be. The only difference, you delta Tf. So if you can remember this small change, you can answer any question given on this. Ideal solutions of two liquids. What is the point of ideal solutions? In binary solution of two liquids, the partial vapor pressure of each component is equal to mole fraction of the component in solution multiplied by vapor pressure of pure solvent. Sir, what is it? You take, we have two components Pa for a solution A, Pb for solution B, Pb. Now if you are taking in this particular one, A and B are added to each other, P naught A for pure solvent A, P naught B for pure solvent B. But if you have mixed A and B, both are present, corresponding to Pa, Pb will be in solution. Remember the difference? If only A is there, P naught A. If only B is there, P naught B. But if A and B are present, then it becomes pressure P and Pb. How is Pa related to P naught A? Pa is equals to Xa into P naught A. Pb is equals to Xb into P naught B. This is the formula of ideal solutions. From Dalton's law, total pressure is equals to Pa plus Pb. So you add these two, that will be your overall formula for the ideal solutions. So the ideal solutions, what we'll get, P is equals to P naught A. The final pressure is taken as P naught A Xa plus P naught B Xb. Coming to this, which when we say it is an ideal solution, a solution which obeys Raoult's law, this formula should be obeyed at all conditions of temperature and concentration, then it is ideal solution. In ideal solutions, the forces of attraction between any two constituent particles should be same, whether it is solute-solute, solvent-solvent, solute-solvent. So everywhere the interaction should be same. So delta H mixing should be 0, delta V mixing should be 0. Such type of combinations are called ideal solutions, and one such example is all homologous compounds like benzene, toluene, CHCl3, CCl4. Such type of examples comes under ideal solutions. Non-ideal solutions, if you take, these are of two types. Non-ideal solutions, negative deviation, which are showing negative deviation. When the negative deviation will come? When there is a decrease in volume, decrease in the space between the particles. When there will be decrease in the volume? When there is attractions between the molecules increases. When attraction between the molecule increases, decreases the volume space between the two particles. So the force of attraction between the molecules is more when compared to their individual interactions between the same molecules. So that is where you can have the delta H mixing will be less than 0, resulting in exothermic reactions. Delta V mixing will be 0, decrease in the volume. Such condition is appearing, then we say they are non-ideal solutions. Examples for non-ideal solutions showing negative deviation. Best example for negative deviation, I can say the best example is acid water combination. Any acid water combination is a best example for negative deviations. Coming to positive deviations, when you will have positive deviation, when the particles are moving away from each other, then the positive deviation. When they will move away, when repulsions are more rather than attractions, repulsions are more. That means the attractive forces are less, decreasing between the molecules. That results in the formation of solution becomes difficult. So that means we need to forcefully make the solution to happen. So endothermic process, the mixing will be greater than 0, increase in the volume between them. So the examples for all that type of molecules is alcohol water combination. Any alcohol water combination that makes less attractive forces between the molecules leads to positive deviation. So remember this simple logic: alcohol water is positive, acid water is negative. That is the simple logic. Now any non-ideal solution, can you 100% separate the two components from each other? No. If a solution is ideal solution, separation of the components is 100% possible. Pure A can be produced, pure B can be produced. But if you have non-ideal solutions, A and B cannot be separated 100% from the solutions. So that means those will be 100% separation of the individual components is not possible from non-ideal solutions, and that is because of formation of azeotropic mixture. What is azeotropic mixture? When The non-ideal solution is subjected to fractional distillation. Final mixture which distills without change in composition. Without change in composition, then that composition is called azeotropic mixture. So azeotropy, no boiling point change. No boiling change. So if you boil, both will boil. If you condense, both will condense. So no change in the composition. One such example, 95.5% alcohol, ethanol, and 4.5% water, which is called as rectified spirit. Rectified spirit is an example of azeotropic mixture, the best example we can take. And now we are moving into the next topic, moving from solutions to surface chemistry. What are the major important points we'll be learning in surface chemistry? It is all related to the chemistry that deals with surface phenomena. Any chemical interactions that are happening on the surface or interface, then those comes under this concept of surface chemistry. And it is divided into three parts: adsorption phenomena, catalysis, and colloids. It is divided into three parts. Now when you take an adsorption, what is adsorption? Accumulation of particles on the surface. If the concentration in the surface increases, accumulation or concentration on the surface of another substance, but does not go into the bulk of the medium. Bulk means going inside, interior parts. We are not concerned to that chemistry which is happening in the bulk of the substance. We are only related to the chemistry on the surface that is taking place. So those type of phenomena is taken as adsorption phenomena. And the substance which gets adsorbed is known as adsorbate, and the substance which on which adsorption takes place is adsorbent. I'll take an example. You have here the solid particles. Let us take the water droplets are there. Your silica gel is coming from outside. Now these particle, wherever you are cutting, a silica gel is present over here. Now after the silica gel comes over here, all these particles will start accumulating on the surface of that silica gel. Now your silica gel, which is going to be the one on which adsorption is taking place, so this will be your adsorbent, and the particles, water droplets, will become the adsorbate. This is your difference between the two. Differences between physical adsorption and chemical adsorption. When you are taking physical adsorption and chemical adsorptions, physical, not please correct this, adsorptions. Okay, small correction in this, adsorption, not absorption. Physical, the word itself says it is not a strong force, it's just a physical forces present between the molecules. We can say these are the weak van der Waals forces which are present between the molecules are responsible for physical adsorption. If there is a strong chemical bonds present between the molecules, adsorbates and adsorbents, then they are called chemical adsorption. Physical adsorption is just an attractive force between any two particles. So any two particles will always have attraction because nucleus and electron will have attraction. So it is non-specific in nature, but chemical bond, covalent bond, is directional bond. It is always specific in nature. Since attractions can be formed, can be broken easily, it is reversible in nature, but covalent bond formation is irreversible. You cannot break it easily. Formation and breaking is not reversible, so it is irreversible in nature. Following temperature, pressure, effect of pressure, if you see, increases with increase in pressure. It goes on increasing, goes on increasing, goes on increasing. There is no change. You can observe it is going on increasing. But in chemical adsorption, it initially increases, reaches a maximum value, and then becomes constant. So this is the effect, increases, but after certain time becomes constant. Heat of adsorption is low, 40 to 80 maximum it will be. Heat of adsorption is high, 80 to 240. The negative enthalpy will be there, negative value of enthalpy. It is always exothermic. Adsorption is always exothermic. 80 to 240 will be chemical adsorption. 20 to 40 or 20 to 60, around that particular will be physical adsorption. Multi-molecular layer of adsorption is physical adsorption. That's the reason effect of pressure, you can see it is only increasing. It is multi-molecular adsorption, but it is only uni-layered adsorption. Multi-molecular layered adsorption is physical, uni-layered adsorption is chemical. Freundlich adsorption isotherm. If you go with this, Freundlich is a scientist who has taken the extent of adsorption, X by M. X stands for the amount of adsorbate per unit mass of adsorbent, that is taken as X by M. So how much adsorption is taking place per unit mass of adsorbent is taken as adsorption, extent of adsorption. he has quantitatively given the expression between x by m versus pressure at a different temperatures. The quantitative expression is x by m is equals to k into p power, it is k into p power 1 by n, k into p power 1 by n, where you can see with the temperature, as temperature is decreasing, it is increasing. So x by m increases is inversely proportional to temperature. You can easily understand this particular one. The x by m extent of adsorption is very high with less temperatures rather than with high temperatures. You can see the difference in that particular one clearly. So now basing on this, if you go for approaching with logarithms, applying log on both sides, log x by m is equals to log k plus 1 by n into log p. If I take the graph between log x by m versus log p, you'll get a positive because it is like a y is equals to m into x plus c. This is in the form of y into mx plus c. So it is going to be a positive slope, straight line with a positive slope. So the positive slope with the intercept is going to be log k, intercept is log k, and slope is equals to 1 by n. That is the information. Numerically this will be the question. Many times they have asked in CET examinations also. They give you a graphical data, and from the data they ask you the value of k, value of n. See the intercept value, that gives you log k value, and the slope value will give you 1 by n value. Please use it in your numericals. Catalysis. What is catalysis? Any chemical reaction carried out in presence of a catalyst. If a chemical reaction is involving catalyst, then that reactions are called catalysis reactions. A catalyst is a substance which increases rate but itself does not undergo any chemical change at the end of the reaction. In the phenomena in which catalyst involves in the chemical reaction, those particular reactions are called catalysis reactions. Types of catalysis, we have two types: homogeneous catalysis and heterogeneous catalysis reactions. Homo means same, genus means phase, hetero different, genus means phase. So a simple example, if I have to give you a simple example, 2SO2 plus O2 gives rise to 2SO3. This reaction, if I take, SO2 is a gas, O2 is a gas. Same way, if I take 2SO2 plus O2 gives rise to 2SO3. The same reaction again I am taking. In both the reactions, the same equation I have taken. But the only difference, you see, I am not concerned about the products. I am not concerned about products. I am only seeing the reactant side. And along with the reactants, the catalyst, if I am taking a catalyst to be some nitric oxide, NO is a catalyst I have taken. If I am taking a catalyst like V2O5 is a catalyst taken. NO is a gas and V2O5 is a solid. Now if you take, this is solid and gas, they are two different physical states. So this is heterogeneous. But NO is a gas and everything in the reactant side is gas. All are gases. So this is homogeneous, homo, same. Again I am writing same phase, hetero different phase. So for your convenience, again I am writing this homogeneous heterogeneous catalysis. So this is a very easy way to understand this particular one. Coming to shape selective catalysis, the catalytic reaction which depends on the pore structure of the catalyst. I hope this comes in the exam also, you have understood this point. It's a pore structure, depends on the pore structure of the catalyst and size of the reactant molecules. Many times they confuse you this, they give you reverse order. Pore structure should be taken for which one? Catalyst. Size should be considered for which one? Reactant. That should be your criteria to remember. Very important. Shape selective catalysis reactions. Example for such type of shape selective catalysis: ZSM5 for dehydration of alcohols. It is used for dehydration of alcohols. This is very important example, mostly asked in the examinations. Enzyme catalysis reactions, biocatalysts. Enzymes are nothing but proteins produced by plants and animals. These are colloidal in nature, which can act as catalysts for biochemical reactions. These are also called as biocatalysts. Biocatalysts are biochemical reactions. Enzymes are taken as the enzymatic catalysis reactions. Biocatalysis reactions are biocatalysts we call. And the last but one concept we are taking is the colloids. Moving to colloids, what is a colloidal state? It is intermediate state to your true solutions and your suspensions. In your true solutions, you have anything less than 1 nanometer, you have anything greater than 100 nanometers. In between these two parameters is your colloids. Your colloids comes in between these two, that is going to be within 1 to 100 nanometer range. 1 to 100 nanometer range is your colloidal particle. Size of the particle is in between this range, then all those solutions will result in the formation of colloidal solutions. A colloid is a heterogeneous system. True solution is a homogeneous, we have learned, no, binary solutions. But it is now colloids are heterogeneous systems containing two phases. One is called as dispersed phase. This is just like your solute in your solution, small composition. Dispersion medium, this is similar to your solvent in your normal solution, large component. So the solute like particles are dispersed phase and solvent like particles are dispersion medium. Example, starch solution, muddy water, ice cream, and 90% of the chemical substances, 90% of day-to-day life you see, most of those will come under colloids. Examples for those we can see: solid in solid, you see solid and solid, we call them as solid soles. Examples for them: gemstones, try to remember them. Solid in liquid, just simply call them as soles. Starch solutions, paints, they all come under the colloidal solutions of solid in liquid type of solutions. Solid in gas type of solutions, solid aerosols, whenever you have gas is your dispersion medium, they are called aerosols. Smoke and dust comes under this category of aerosols. Coming to some more examples: liquid in solid, they are called as gels. All your toothpaste, jellies, butter, those all comes under this. Liquid in liquid, this is very important point. Liquid in liquid type of colloidal solutions are called emulsions. Examples for the milk, cod liver oil, etc. Liquid in gas, gas again came, so it is aerosol. Aerosol examples for liquid in gas, aerosols, mist, fog, example. Gas in solid, solid foams, foam rubber, pumice stone. Gas in liquid, foam, froth, cream, soap, lather. These also examples they may ask you in exams, so you should be aware of the examples which come under which category of colloidal solutions. Now the next most important classifications of colloidal solutions is lyophilic soles and lyophobic soles. Lyo is solvent, philic means affinity, affinity is present between them. Phobic means hatred, hatred, repulsive, hatred. This is going to be the one. So if you have affinity between dp and dm, dispersed phase and dispersion medium, lyophilic. If you have no affinity or repulsive action between dp and dm, then it is lyophobic. If they are having attraction, why do they separate? So they are very stable. If they don't like to stay, they are easy to separate, so they are less stable. If they are ready to form, they are always in reversible state. So if you are finally you did something and separated, again they can mix easily. But if you have separated, they never mix easily, so it is irreversible. If they are stable, they cannot be removed from each other, coagulated, separated. They cannot be separated, they cannot be precipitated if they are stable. If they are unstable, they can easily be coagulated. Yes, easily coagulated. Now viscosity is more than dispersion medium. So viscosity is more than the dispersion medium, where viscosity is same as dispersion medium. This is the differences. Surface tension less than the dispersion medium, surface tension is same as the dispersion medium. So some common terms we have to understand, we have to learn, so that makes our easy way in CET examinations. Moving to the colloids, basic classifications, another classification, if you see with respect to the size of particle size of dispersed phase particles, based on the size of dispersed phase, we classified them into three categories: multimolecular colloids, macromolecular colloids, associated colloids. All inorganic colloids. Simple way to remember: if you have gold soul, silver soul, like this, arsenic sulfide soul, ferric hydroxide soul, if it is an inorganic compound and the question is about inorganic colloids, they all comes under multimolecular colloids. If there is of biomolecules, if the colloid is of biomolecules, then they all come under the category of macromolecular colloids. Biomolecules, macromolecules, molecular colloids. So starch, Cellulose, starch. If you say the starch solution, starch is a biomolecule, so it is going to be macromolecular. But if you have soap solutions resulting in the formation of micelle formation, they all come under associated colloids. The soap solution, which is the higher fatty acids of sodium or potassium salts, so they result in formation of a micelle is a colloidal range particle resulting in formation of lather and cleansing action of soaps. That is a example of associated colloids. Preparation of colloids can be done in three ways. One is by chemical methods, in that double decomposition will be there, oxidation will be there, reduction process can be there, precipitation, hydrolysis process can be possible. By any way, we convert small sized particle into a colloidal range particle. This is the ultimate challenge for the conversion. So the chemical methods will work on this conversion of small size to colloidal range particle. Then second one is electrical dispersion method, Bredik's arc method. Particularly, this is a method which is used to prepare the metal soles like gold sole or silver sole, which is used for, in this, the principle involved in this is both dispersion and condensation and dispersion phenomena both are involved in this particular one. So that is the most important point about Bredik's arc method. Third one is peptidization process. In peptidization process, you have a fresh precipitate which is there. You will add a suitable electrolyte having common ion. You will be adding a common ion containing electrolyte. You will be adding, which results in the formation of a colloidal solution. If it is resulting in the formation of colloid, then that is called peptidization, and this electrolyte is called peptizing agent. This is called peptizing agent we call. So the fresh precipitate resulting in the formation of colloid is called peptidization process. This is going to be the peptidization process. An easy way to understand that. Purification of colloid can be done in three ways again. Dialysis process, where you will have a dialysis membrane. You will be sending the pure solvent, and if the solvent is coming out in the form of solution carrying the true particles in it, it is going to come out as true solutions, leaving behind colloidal particles inside. So the colloid is left inside. So this is where we call the dialysis process. If solvent enters into the membrane and leaves out in the form of solution carrying away true particles, that phenomena is dialysis. Electrodialysis, if the same dialysis carried out in presence of electric field, if the phenomena is carried out in presence of electric field, it is called electrodialysis process. And ultrafiltration, if you take a colloidon solution and a filter paper dipped in colloidal solution will make ultrafilter paper to come. The ultrafilter paper is used for separating the colloidal range particles which cannot penetrate through the pores of that particular uh, ultrafilter paper, and that colloidon solution is used for this particular one to prepare an ultrafilter paper which will be used to separate true particles from colloidal particles. Properties of colloidal solutions, colligative properties. As we know, moving from true particles to colloidal particles, if you see from true particles to colloidal particles, the size is increasing, aggregation or association is increasing. When association takes place, association is inversely proportional to colligative properties. So colligative properties decreases, association is inversely related to colligative property. So size is increasing by association of particles, so colligative properties are decreasing when compared to true solutions. Colloidal solutions will have less colligative properties. Tyndall effect, the phenomena of scattering of the incident light by colloidal particles is called Tyndall effect. This is one way we can identify the solution is colloidal solution. But in this also we have two things. Lyophobic colloids can be easily identified by Tyndall effect. Lyophilic cannot be easily identified by Tyndall effect. So Tyndall effect is also one of the important factor of properties of colloidal solution. Color exhibiting property, this is going to be a very key role for the colloidal solutions. Depending on the size of the particles, there are two things important. Depends on the wavelength of light scattered and size of the colloidal particle. Depending on two things, the color exhibited by the substance will be changing. As the size goes on increasing, it goes on changes the light scattering light the medium, the range of the scattering light, and the color exhibited of the substance or the solution will be changing. So this is one of the important points. Brownian movement, very important one. Why the colloidal solutions are stable, and the explanation is excellently, beautifully explained in this concept, which is called Brownian movement. When colloidal solution is viewed under an ultra microscope, the particles are observed to be in constant random movement, and this type of zigzag movement of colloidal particles is called Brownian movement. The zigzag movement of the particles in any direction you take, this is Brownian movement, which is going to be next plan. Zeta potential, electrokinetic potential. An electrical double layer of opposite charges exists between dispersed phase and dispersion medium. So opposite charges, you have a positive over here, there will be a negative surrounding in all the directions. So there is an electrical double layer. Here is one layer, here is one layer. So there are electrical double layer. The charge difference between these electrical double layer develops a potential which is called as zeta potential or electrokinetic potential. So the potential developed between the double layer, electrical double layer, is called zeta potential. Electroforces, every colloidal solution will have some charge, positive or negative, not both. So when you place them in an electrical field, if you say they are placed in an electric field, all these particles will move towards an oppositely charged plate of an electrical field. This movement of colloidal particles towards oppositely charged electrodes under the influence of electric field is called electrophoresis. If cations are moving, they are called cataphoresis. If anions are moving, they are called anaphoresis. And this is the process where we can, it is similar to that of electrolysis phenomena, but movement indicates the colloidal particles are charged particles. This is the proof for the existence of charge on the colloidal particles. How do the charge exist on colloidal particles? By preferential absorption of a charge which is a common ion. That is the indication of that. The process coagulation is conversion of colloidal particles into suspensions. It is exactly opposite to peptidization. Colloidal particles to suspensions is coagulation, and the precipitation takes place. That precipitation is called coagulation, or the other word flocculation. And here itself we are talking about coagulating power or coagulating value. When you're taking this particular one, coagulating value, when you are taking this, is inversely proportional to, let us take value, inversely proportional to coagulating power, or fluctuating value inversely proportional to fluctuating power. Value is always expressed in milliliters, number of milliliters of the colloidal solution, which is having the power of getting coagulated. The coagulating power and value, they are exactly opposite terms. Value is always inversely proportional to power. Remember this point. Hardy-Skulls rule, if I am taking the in greater, higher the charge, if every colloidal particle has some charge, so when you bring an opposite charge towards it, then there is a coagulation possibility. Now, higher the charge on the precipitating ion, greater will be the coagulating power. So who can precipitate the solution much faster, that is having more power. So how do we decide the coagulating power for an ion? Who can precipitate more faster, that is having greater power. And how can precipitate more faster? Who have greater charge can precipitate more faster. If your solution is negative, then the coagulating power of cations can be given in this way. Aluminum will have greater than magnesium, having greater than potassium. You can see the charge decreases, the power decreases. If your colloidal solution is positive, then it is exactly opposite to this. You can phosphate can be taken greater, then your sulfate can be taken less, and the chloride can be taken less. This can be for anions. So this is about the Hardy-Skulls rule. Moving to the next concept, emulsions. Emulsions are the colloidal system where liquid dispersed phase in liquid dispersion medium. Dispersed phase in liquid dispersion medium is called emulsions. These are of two types: water in oil type of emulsions, oil in water type of emulsions, where dP will be the water, dm will be the oil. If dP will be the oil, dm will be the water. These are two types of emulsions which are possible. If you're taking the milk is an example, milk, you can see more and more water you add, it will be forming more and more solution. So the water, it is going to be the oil in water type of emulsion. Milk comes under that particular category. So it is simple that emulsifying agents, generally when we see the oil in water type of emulsions are less stable, They undergo coagulation. So when you take oil in water type of emulsions, they are less stable. They undergo coagulation on standing for long time. Therefore, certain substances are known as emulsifiers are added to the emulsions in order to stabilize them. So emulsifiers are added to stabilize those colloidal solutions, and those called as emulsifying agents. And one such things like in your milk, the emulsifying agents, where you can see we have two types of proteins over there, casein and whey protein. Caseins are taken as the emulsifying agents in your milk. So proteins, gums, natural and synthetic soaps, they all come under the category of emulsifying agents. And I hope the concepts are explained in short, in a fast brushing of the concepts I have done for you. I hope you are clear with the concepts, hoping everyone understood the concepts. Wait for it. I'm hoping everyone enjoyed the session. Thank you and all the best.